She knocked on my door with wine and a smile, then said 4 words that changed everything. "Don't blink, I'm leaving." It was just another Tuesday night when everything changed. David was sitting in his small apartment, scrolling through his phone and thinking about ordering pizza for dinner. The kind of evening where nothing special was supposed to happen. The kind of night you forget about by morning. Then came the knock on his door. David had been living in the same apartment building for almost 4 years now. It was one of those old buildings where you could hear your neighbors walking around upstairs, and the walls were thin enough that you knew when someone was having a bad day. But it was cheap and the location was good, so he stayed. Across the hall lived Lily. She had moved in about 3 years ago, and from day one, she was different from anyone he had ever met. While most people in the building kept to themselves, Lily was the type who would leave little notes under your door if she noticed you looked stressed. She collected old books from garage sales and always had at least 2 or 3 stacked on the windowsill of the hallway. Lily had this way of making ordinary things feel special. She would find interesting stories in the most random places and had opinions about everything from the best coffee shops in town to why old movies were better than new ones. David found himself looking forward to their random conversations in the hallway or by the mailboxes. Tonight was different, though. When David opened the door, Lily was standing there with a bottle of wine in her hands and wearing that smile he had come to recognize over the years. It was the kind of smile that meant she had something on her mind, something important she wanted to share. "Hey," she said, pushing past him into his living room without waiting for an invitation. "I need to talk to you about something." David watched as she set the wine down on his coffee table and turned to face him. Her usual playful energy seemed more intense tonight, more focused. She was wearing a simple outfit, jeans and an old concert shirt from some band he had never heard of, but there was something in her eyes that made the whole room feel different. "Okay," David said, closing the door behind him. "What's going on?" Lily walked over to his couch but didn't sit down. Instead, she stood there for a moment like she was trying to find the right words for whatever she wanted to say. David had seen her do this before when she was working on one of her photography projects or when she was trying to explain some complicated idea she had been thinking about. "I want to show you something," she finally said. "But before I do, I need you to promise me something." David raised an eyebrow. "What kind of promise?" "Promise me that whatever happens in the next hour, you won't look away. No matter what I do or what I say, you'll pay attention. Really pay attention." He laughed a little, thinking this was another one of her creative experiments. Lily was always working on some kind of art project or trying out new ideas for her photography. Last month, she had asked him to help her take pictures of shadows at different times of day. The month before that, she had wanted to interview him about his childhood memories for some story she was writing. "Sure," David said. "I promise," but Lily's expression didn't change. She looked more serious than he had ever seen her. "No, David, I'm really serious about this. Don't look away. Don't get distracted by your phone or start thinking about something else. I need you to be completely here with me." Something in her voice made David stop smiling. This wasn't like her usual projects or experiments. There was something urgent in the way she was talking, something that made his chest feel tight. "Don't even blink," she added quietly. David nodded, suddenly feeling like he had agreed to something much bigger than he understood. "Okay, I won't look away." Lily opened the wine and poured 2 glasses, her hands shaking just slightly. David noticed because in all the time he had known her, Lily had always been steady, confident. She was the type of person who never seemed nervous about anything. "Good," she said, handing him a glass, "because what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything between us." They sat down on opposite ends of his couch, and David found himself studying her face in a way he never had before. Maybe it was because she had asked him not to look away, or maybe it was because something about this whole situation felt important in a way he couldn't explain yet. Lily took a sip of her wine and then set the glass down carefully on the coffee table. "I've been keeping something from you," she said. "Something big, and I can't keep it inside anymore." David waited. Over the years, he had learned that Lily sometimes needed time to work up to saying what was really on her mind. She would start talking around the edges of something before getting to the heart of it. "You know how I'm always taking pictures and working on different projects?" she continued. David nodded. Lily's apartment was full of cameras and art supplies. She had photos hanging on every wall, some that she had taken and others that she had collected from different places. She was always working on something creative. Well, a few months ago I applied for this program. A photography program. It's in another country, actually. Spain. David felt something shift in his chest. Oh, that sounds amazing. It is amazing, Lily said. It's everything I've ever wanted. Full scholarship, working with some of the best photographers in the world, traveling to different cities to work on projects. It's the kind of opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime. She paused and looked down at her hands. I got accepted. David should have felt happy for her. This was clearly something she had worked hard for, something she wanted. But instead, he felt like someone had just told him that his favorite restaurant was closing down forever. When do you start? He asked. That's the thing, Lily said, looking up at him again. I start next week. I leave this Thursday. That was in 2 days. Thursday? David repeated. This Thursday? Lily nodded. I've known for weeks, but I kept putting off telling people. I kept finding reasons to wait. But I can't wait anymore. Because I need to start packing, and I need to say goodbye. And I need to... She trailed off, and David realized that this conversation was about much more than just her leaving for school. There was something else she wasn't saying yet, something that was making her hands shake and her voice sound different than usual. I need to be honest with you, she said finally, about everything. Before I go, I need you to see who I really am. Not the version of me that I've been showing you for the past 3 years, but the real me. The me that I've been too scared to let you see. David felt his heart start beating faster. Lily, what are you talking about? She stood up from the couch and walked over to the window, looking out at the street below. I've been hiding, she said quietly. This whole time I've been pretending to be someone I'm not. Someone safer, someone easier to be around. She turned back to face him. But tonight, before I leave, I want to show you who I actually am, all of me. Even the parts I've been scared to share. David set down his wine glass and looked at her really closely for the first time since she had arrived. There was something different about the way she was standing, the way she was looking at him. Like she had made some kind of decision that couldn't be undone? What do you mean? He asked. Lily walked back over to where he was sitting and stood in front of him. I mean, I'm done pretending. I'm done hiding behind small talk and casual friendship and acting like I don't care about things that I actually care about very much. She took a deep breath. Starting right now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. About everything. And I need you to promise me again that you won't look away no matter how uncomfortable it gets. David looked up at her and realized that whatever was about to happen was going to change their friendship forever. Maybe that's what she meant when she said it would change everything between them. I promise, he said again, and this time he really meant it. The silence in the room felt heavy after Lily's words. David could hear his own heartbeat and the sound of cars passing by outside his window. He had promised not to look away, but part of him wanted to break that promise because whatever was coming felt too big, too important. Lily walked back to the couch and sat down, but this time she was closer to him than before, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and floral that she had worn for as long as he had known her. I need to start from the beginning, she said, picking up her wine glass but not drinking from it. The real beginning, not the story I've been telling myself for the past few months. David waited. He had learned that when Lily had something important to say, the best thing to do was give her space to say it in her own way. Remember when I first moved into this building? She asked. 3 years ago in the middle of summer? David nodded. How could he forget? It had been one of those incredibly hot days where the air conditioning barely worked, and he had been coming home from work when he saw this girl struggling to carry boxes up the stairs by herself. She was sweating and looked frustrated, but she was also laughing at the situation like it was funny instead of annoying. I had just broken up with my boyfriend, Lily continued, a really serious relationship that had lasted 2 years. We were supposed to move in together, but instead I ended up moving into this tiny apartment by myself. This was news to David. In all their conversations over the years, Lily had never mentioned having a serious boyfriend. She talked about dating sometimes, about going out with different people, but never about being in love or living with someone. Why didn't you ever tell me about him? David asked. Lily looked down at her hands. Because talking about him meant talking about why we broke up. And talking about why we broke up meant admitting things about myself that I wasn't ready to admit. She took a small sip of wine and continued. His name was Alex. We met in college and dated all through our last 2 years. He was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, had his whole life planned out. He was going to be a lawyer, and I was going to be a photographer, and we were going to get married and buy a house and have kids. David tried to imagine Lily in that kind of traditional relationship. It was hard to picture because she had always seemed so independent, so focused on her own interests and projects. But the closer we got to graduation, the more I started feeling like I was suffocating, Lily said. Not because Alex was a bad person, but because I realized I'd been pretending to want the same things he wanted. I had been agreeing to plans that felt wrong for me just because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. She looked up at David. Have you ever felt like that? Like you were living someone else's life instead of your own? David thought about it. There had been times in his own life when he had made choices because they seemed like the right choices, not because they felt right to him. Jobs he had taken because they paid well, relationships he had stayed in longer than he should have because breaking up seemed harder than staying together. Yeah, he said, I think I know what you mean. So I broke up with Alex 2 weeks before we were supposed to move in together. I told him I needed space to figure out what I actually wanted from my life. And then I found this apartment and decided to start over. Lily set down her wine glass and turned to face David more directly. But here's the thing I never told you. Moving here wasn't just about starting over. It was about running away. Running away from what? From myself. From all the parts of me that I didn't know how to handle. David was starting to understand that this conversation was going somewhere much deeper than he had expected. This wasn't just about Lily leaving for school. This was about 3 years of friendship and all the things that had never been said between them. When I moved in across the hall from you, I decided I was going to be a different person, Lily continued. I was going to be the cool, independent girl who didn't need anyone. I was going to focus on my art and my photography and not get attached to people or places. She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Do you remember the first time we really talked? You had helped me carry those boxes upstairs and I invited you in for a beer. David remembered. They had ended up talking for 3 hours about music and movies and books. It was one of those conversations where time disappeared because you were so interested in what the other person was saying. I told myself that night that we were going to be friends and nothing more, Lily said. Good neighbors. People who could help each other out and have interesting conversations. But nothing deeper than that. And that worked for you? For a while, yeah. It felt safe. I could enjoy your company without having to worry about getting too attached or making things complicated. Lily stood up and walked over to the window again, like she needed some distance to say what came next. But somewhere along the way, things changed. I started looking forward to running into you in the hallway. I started timing my trips to get mail so that maybe I'd see you checking yours too. When you were sick last winter, I made you soup and told myself I was just being a good neighbor. But really, I was worried about you in a way that felt like more than friendship. David felt his stomach flutter. He remembered being sick with the flu last January, and how Lily had brought him homemade chicken soup and stayed to watch a movie with him, even though she was risking getting sick herself. At the time, he had thought it was just her being kind. I started noticing things about you that I shouldn't have been noticing if we were just friends, she continued, still looking out the window. Like how you always buy coffee for the homeless man who sits outside the corner store. Or how you call your mom every Sunday even when you're busy. Or how you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating on something. She turned back to face him, and the more I noticed, the more I realized I was in trouble. What kind of trouble? The kind where you care about someone so much that the thought of losing them keeps you awake at night. The kind where you start imagining what it would be like to wake up next to them every morning. Or what it would be like to tell them about your day and have them actually care about every boring detail. David felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. 3 years of friendship? And Lily was telling him she had been feeling this way the whole time? So when I got the letter about the program in Spain, she continued, I was excited about the opportunity, but I was also relieved. Relieved? Because it gave me a way out. A way to leave before things got more complicated than I could handle. A way to protect myself from feeling too much. She came back and sat down on the couch, even closer to him than before. But then last week, something changed. I was packing up some of my photos, getting ready to put them in storage, and I came across all these pictures I had taken over the past few years. Pictures around the neighborhood, pictures from that trip we took to the lake last summer, pictures of you that I had taken when you weren't paying attention, David's heart was beating so fast he was sure she could hear it. And looking at those pictures, I realized that I wasn't running toward something in Spain. I was running away from something here. I was running away from you and from how I feel about you, and from the possibility that maybe you might feel the same way about me. She reached over and took his hand. So before I leave, I need to know. I need to be completely honest with you about everything, even if it ruins our friendship, even if it makes things weird between us for the next 2 days. David looked down at their hands, his and hers intertwined on the couch between them. What are you saying exactly? He asked, even though he thought he knew. I'm saying that I'm in love with you, Lily said quietly. I'm saying that I have been for a long time and I'm tired of pretending I'm not. Lily stood frozen in the middle of his living room, her tank top clutched in her hands, looking at David with a mixture of hope and terror in her eyes. The apartment felt different now, charged with an energy that neither of them had ever experienced before. Everything that had been unsaid between them for 3 years was finally out in the open. You want to tell me something? She asked quietly. David nodded, his throat feeling dry. He had spent 3 years thinking he knew exactly what kind of friendship they had, and now everything was different. Not just because of what Lily had told him, but because of how brave she had been in telling him. She had stripped away every defense she had, and now it was his turn to do the same. Yeah, he said, but first I need you to know that what you just did, what you just showed me, that's the most incredible thing anyone has ever done for me. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away from him. I've never seen anyone be that honest before, David continued, that brave. And I've definitely never been that honest with anyone myself. He walked over to where she was standing and stopped just a few feet away from her, close enough to see the way her breath was moving in and out, close enough to see the goosebumps on her arms from the cool air in the apartment. Can I tell you a secret? He asked. Lily nodded. I've been in love with you since the day you moved in. The words came out of his mouth before he had time to think about them, and once they were out there, he realized how true they were. Not just true now, but true for all these years that he had been lying to himself about what he felt for her. What? Lily whispered. That first day when I helped you carry those boxes upstairs and we ended up talking for hours, I knew there was something different about you, something that made me feel more like myself than I had ever felt with anyone else. David reached out and gently took the tank top from her hands, setting it back down on the coffee table. If she was going to be completely vulnerable with him, he owed her the same honesty. But I was scared, he continued. You seemed so independent, so sure of what you wanted from your life. And I was just this guy who worked at an office job and didn't have any big dreams or exciting plans. I thought you were way out of my league. Lily shook her head. David, that's not... Let me finish, he said gently. I need to tell you all of it, just like you did. She nodded and waited for him to continue. So I convinced myself that being your friend was enough. I told myself that I was lucky just to have you in my life at all, even if it wasn't in the way I really wanted. David started pacing around the room, the same way Lily had been doing earlier. It was easier to talk when he was moving, when he didn't have to look directly at her standing there with nothing to hide behind. But the truth is, I thought about you all the time. I thought about what it would be like to wake up next to you, to cook dinner with you, to tell you about my day and have you actually care about the boring details. He stopped pacing and looked at her. I thought about what it would be like to love you the way I wanted to love you, not just as a friend, but as someone who was part of my life in every way possible. Lily's tears were falling freely now, but she was smiling too. I learned your schedule, David admitted. I knew what time you usually got home from work, what time you went to the grocery store, what time you checked your mail, and I started timing my own errands so that maybe I'd run into you, just so I could have those few minutes of conversation in the hallway. He walked back over to her, close enough now that he could have reached out and touched her if he wanted to. When you got sick last spring, I called out of work to go buy you medicine and soup, but I told you I was home anyway because I didn't want you to know how worried I had been about you. When you went on that date with the guy from your photography class, I couldn't sleep that night because I was so jealous I felt sick. David laughed, but it was a sad sound. I've been pretending to be your casual friend for 3 years, but really I've been completely crazy about you this whole time. Then why didn't you ever say anything? Lily asked. Because I was a coward, David said simply. Because I thought it was better to have you as a friend than to risk losing you completely by telling you how I really felt. He reached up, and gently wiped away one of her tears with his thumb. And because I thought you were happy with the way things were between us. You never seemed like you wanted anything more from me. I was hiding too, Lily whispered. I was doing the same thing you were doing, pretending to be satisfied with friendship because I was too scared to ask for more. David shook his head. We're both idiots. The biggest idiots in the world, Lily agreed. They stood there looking at each other for a long moment, and David realized that everything had changed between them in the space of one evening. Not just because of what they had said to each other, but because of how they had said it. Because they had finally chosen to be completely honest instead of completely safe. So what happens now? He asked. I don't know, Lily said. I still have to leave on Thursday. The program starts next week and I can't just not show up. David felt his heart sink. For a moment he had forgotten that this conversation was also a goodbye. But maybe, Lily continued, maybe this doesn't have to be the end of something. Maybe it could be the beginning. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we've both been thinking about this all wrong. Maybe the question isn't whether I should stay or go. Maybe the question is whether we're brave enough to see what happens if we stop hiding from each other. She reached out and took his hands in hers. I have to go to Spain. This opportunity is too important for me to pass up. But that doesn't mean this has to be over between us. David looked down at their hands, his and hers intertwined again, and tried to imagine what she was suggesting. You mean like a long-distance relationship? I mean like two people who finally decided to be honest with each other about what they want, Lily said. I mean like two people who are willing to figure it out as they go, even if it's complicated and scary and we don't know how it's going to work out. David looked up at her face, at this person he had been in love with for 3 years without even fully admitting it to himself. She was still standing there completely bare, completely vulnerable, completely brave. Are you asking me to wait for you? He asked. No, Lily said firmly. I'm asking you to come with me. David felt his breath catch. What? Not right away, she said quickly. I know that's impossible. But maybe in a few months when I'm settled in the program, and you've had time to think about what you want to do with your job and your life here. She squeezed his hands. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that maybe we could build something together. Something real. Something that doesn't involve either of us pretending to be someone we're not. David stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Leave his job, leave his apartment, leave everything familiar in his life to move to Spain for a woman who was standing naked in his living room, telling him she loved him. 6 hours ago, that would have sounded completely crazy. Now, it sounded like the most reasonable thing in the world. You're serious? He asked. I've never been more serious about anything in my life, Lily said. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of living like the thing I want most in the world is impossible just because it's also terrifying. She let go of his hands and stepped closer to him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her skin. I love you, she said. Not the version of you that you think I want to see, but the real you. The you who calls out of work when people you care about are sick. The you who times his errands so he can run into his neighbors. The you who has been too scared to tell me how he feels but brave enough to listen when I tell you how I feel. David felt like his chest might explode. I love you too, he said. I love you so much that I can't imagine my life without you in it. Then don't imagine it, Lily said simply. Don't let me leave on Thursday without knowing that you're going to try to find a way to be with me. David looked at her standing there, offering him everything he had ever wanted but been too afraid to ask for. 3 years of friendship, 3 years of hiding, 3 years of pretending that what they had was enough when really it was just the beginning of what they could have if they were brave enough to try. Okay, he said. Yes, I'll find a way. Lily smiled, the first completely happy smile he had seen from her all evening. Really? Really, David said, and then he reached for her and pulled her into his arms, holding her against him like he had wanted to do for 3 years but never had the courage to try. Standing there in his living room, holding the woman he loved while she cried happy tears against his shoulder, David realized that sometimes the most important moments in your life happen when you finally stop being afraid of what you want and start being brave enough to ask for it.